today, I am really grateful to the organizers for having given me this opportunity, and thank you to the chairpersons for being here, and then thanks to the office bearers of IMS and the organizing committee. I think this topic was spoken about by the second faculty also today, and the title given was something else. Whenever I take a commitment, I ask for the entire session, but here it was not sent, so it has got missed somewhere. So then it will only get reinforced that we have to be passionate about preserving the ovaries. So ovarian conservation at the time of hysterectomy for benign disease, that is my topic. Please bear with me because it is a slight repetition of the second talk. Well, we need to be very, very pakka about the terminologies that we use, and the language that we use will be quickly taken up, absorbed by the next generation who are around you, working, assisting you, and then, you know, it goes on. Otherwise, it happens that oophorectomy is a very loose term used every time, so always say elective oophorectomy or elective salpingo-oophorectomy, removal with no medical indication, ovarian pathology or hereditary ovarian cancer syndrome is known as elective surgery. The other terms are also opportunistic or concurrent or incidental. So those are the situations in which elective removal of the ovaries gets done. By and large, it will not be a proper one, but in cases where they are done, we have to know about it in the next 10 minutes. Opportunistic salpingectomy is the concept which is being followed in the past 2 decades, and we believe now in removal of the tubes so that we bring down, whenever we do a hysterectomy, so that we bring down the general population risk of ovarian cancer syndrome, and that we are all doing now. Then there is this concept, very specific, is RRBSO. So every gynecologist should know when one is facing a situation for RRBSO, and that is removal of ovaries and fallopian tubes in a patient with a hereditary ovarian cancer syndrome under specific clinical conditions. The story so far, what has been happening, is that hysterectomy for benign disease in the mid-40, the gynecologist gets triggered. We counsel the family that, okay, in future there is a possibility of cancer, and the family says, "Sab kuch saaf kar dijiye, doctor, ab kuch nahi chahiye, mujhe nahi chahiye." And the rationale with which it is done is that it will reduce the risk of ovarian, other surgeries for other ovarian pathologies, and then the most important logic which is given is already the uterus and tubes are removed. How many more days the ovary is going to function anyway? So the short interval to spontaneous menopause is being cited as a reason, and that is what we have to change. That is what we must not do as going forward. So ovarian conservation at the time of hysterectomy, are there benefits of elective oophorectomy? Let us look at that. Ovarian cancer reduction, is it really true? Or does it really happen? Breast cancer risk reduction. Bilateral oophorectomy reduces risk in women less than 47 years is what evidence says. And you know, the MHT which follows it, essentially, it will not affect the risk reduction. So that means it's possible to do oophorectomy to reduce breast cancer reduction in select women, and then follow it with MHT, and be very confident that it is not going to affect the risk reduction which is achieved with the oophorectomy. Avoid the need for subsequent oophorectomy, reoperation for ovarian pathology, and this is a very small percentage, so it should not be cited as a reason. It is 3 to 9% of the entire population of these post-surgical women. So these are the supporting studies for that. Now, the problem with removal of ovary is in the premenopausal women, it has got severe consequences, and already the previous speaker has said, but to reiterate, long-term health risks are what we are looking at today. And the main reason we must look at it is women live longer today, more medication is available for chronic diseases, and you know, better opportunities for healthcare are available. So we don't want ovarian removal to come in the way, in the way of that longevity. So all-cause mortality increases if premenopausal women lose normal ovaries. Cardiovascular disease, stroke, chronic kidney disease, cognitive function, depression, anxiety, glaucoma is more in these women, osteoporosis of course, and then the unspoken reality of sexual dysfunction, which the woman suffers, never tells, and for the partner is probably worse. Because I think men retain sexuality longer, and they look forward to more sexuality when the stress of earning, etc. is over. So there is a very huge lacuna there in our care which we are not addressing. Ovarian conservation at the time of hysterectomy, the consequences, what we must, why must we conserve? Why must we conserve? Because this element of surgical menopause is something very severe. An abrupt drop in the circulating estrogen causes untold harm, and a high FSH levels. Typically, menopausal symptoms will come, which we have been speaking about now, and non-ovarian sources of sex steroids cannot compensate, because some gynecologists will say adrenal gland to nahi nikala hai na, khali ovary nikala hai, wahan se aa jayega. But it is not true. It cannot compensate for the natural beautiful hormone estrogen, and surgical morbidity is actually rare. So and it is technically difficult through the vaginal route, removal of ovary. So that does not impose much of a disadvantage. You can remove in cases where it is indicated, but normal ovaries should be kept. The consequences of elective oophorectomy to continue. This is more data which come up which said that when early age ovaries are removed, there is increase in coronary heart, which I spoke about. Endothelial dysfunction is the root cause of all problems which happens due to lack of estrogen. Lung cancer is more common, and most often they do not take MHT. They are not provided. The surgeon who does it does not provide MHT, and then all-cause mortality is increased. So that is more data supporting it. Let us go forward. Now this is again about what I spoke. Chronic kidney disease, CKD, is more. Because of endothelial dysfunction, cognitive function we spoke about. Now, with MHT in these women, so even if you come across a woman who has had an inadvertent oophorectomy, be sure that you give MHT, because then that can kind of, bring back a little bit of cognitive function, verbal fluency, memory, procedural learning, and executive function. And estrogen therapy may be neuroprotective, improvements in sleep and relief, and all this we have been speaking, and there is good evidence for that. This is more about the risk of depression, anxiety, glaucoma, and osteoporosis. So we shall go ahead. Now, oophorectomy must be done only under special circumstances, and that we must explore. Wherever there is ovarian pathology which requires removal, or there is a need for RRBSO. Benign ovarian neoplasms, pelvic pathology, when oophorectomy becomes a part of surgical treatment, and you can very well justify it. So there are ovarian neoplasms, because to a gynecologist I need not tell, when we come across these kind of teratomas or mucinous cystadenomas which are too large and ovarian tissue is not there to conserve, endometriosis, where when the woman requires definitive surgery because all else has failed, and whenever there is an inflammatory pathology which is too large, not responded enough to antibiotics, like a TO abscess, and when there is a lot of pain due to adhesions, and we try to do surgery, and then if we do not completely remove with clamping of the infundibulopelvic ligament, there is a high risk of residual ovarian syndrome where there is persistent pelvic pain. So these are situations very carefully judged with counseling for MHT in place that you can consider oophorectomy whenever there is a pathology on the ovary. So pathological ovary remove but with counseling, with assessment, and whether normal ovarian tissue can be conserved indeed is what we must look at. There is some percentage there, and that is about the residual ovarian syndrome, which was reported to be between 0.9 to 3.4%. Not that you should look at removal always, but you must know that such a situation can come when we are leaving some remnant of the ovary behind. So maybe it is better to remove it when the adhesions are too bad. Because whenever pelvic adhesions are very dense, a resurgery also becomes challenging. All patients should be assessed for risk factors for ovarian and breast cancer. The decision to conserve or not. She has come with fibroids, with adenomyosis. I think the previous speaker also said risk assessment is what we must do. As a first step, before doing hysterectomy for benign disease, do a risk assessment for ovarian and breast cancer. I'm sure even today it is not there in the protocol for us for doing risk assessment. So before hysterectomy, do a risk assessment. So patients from whom familial cancer syndrome, with some risk factors who do not have not been tested for hereditary cancer syndrome, please test. Counseling must be then individualized and include a detailed discussion of advantages and disadvantages of elective oophorectomy. So even if we are have a complete discussion with the woman and the family, because they will have to spend on MHT. It is family money. They will have to spend on higher end care versus the opportunistic, salpingectomy also. Only salpingectomy are not removing the ovary. So I have few more points to add. Ovarian conservation at the time, how to identify women at risk. So the key criteria for genetic risk evaluation is a personal history of female breast cancer diagnosed earlier than 50 years. Then there is a triple negative breast cancer in the family, or personal or family history of ovarian cancer, male breast cancer in the family, metastatic prostate cancer in the family, or exocrine pancreatic cancer in the family. So that is all a very key criteria for genetic risk. You have to conduct genetic risk evaluation, and alternatively, some suggest universal testing, but that has not come to us. At least have risk-based assessment. So when you look at the relative risk and the lifetime probability percentage, then you can see here that whenever there is BRCA1 and 2 genetic mutation, then the lifetime probability goes up. And if you can see here, those are the highlights, 1 and 2 mutations, right? And then there is the infertile women where there is an endometriosis, and there is an increase in the risk of clear cell endometrioid or low-grade serous carcinoma. If we do not remove the ovaries, there is that risk. And then the past use of oral contraceptives, well, that will not go into that. Risk assessment for cancer, combining several guidelines, non-Jewish families. Now, this is something important. We can focus on the non-Jewish families. One case of breast cancer less than 40-year-old in the first or second degree relative. One first or second degree relative with breast or ovarian cancer at any age. 2 or more cases of breast cancer. So this is difficult to remember. So what will help? Now this is an excerpt from UpToDate. So you can take this, blow it up and keep it in the clinic for reference. So there are many such tools for risk assessment, which may not be a scoring chart, but maybe in the form of list also. And it is cheaper, it is in front of your eyes. Rather, the BRCA testing also can come, but up front you have some kind of a risk assessment in front of your eyes to please make use of these kind of lists where you can, tell the woman that, look here, this is your risk for, familial risk for cancer. So also is Amsterdam 2 criteria, and in them, this kind of risk assessment will help us to decide whether to keep the ovaries or not. Selection of initial genetic testing methods. Women whose histories are consistent with hereditary cancer, multi-gene panel testing as the first line testing should be offered. Understanding RRBSO, what is true. Risk reducing is removal of both ovaries, both fallopian tubes in women. High risk for epithelial ovarian and fallopian tube cancer. It is only for epithelial ovarian it will prevent, not the other types of cancers. And the pathogenic variants in BRCA1 and 2 or Lynch syndrome are there. When performed before 50, it's also associated with decreased risk for breast cancer. So it reduces ovarian, tubal, and also the breast cancer in the carriers. And when performed with hysterectomy, endometrial and ovarian cancer, but there is a caveat here, consequences of RRBSO or premature menopause. Women at high risk for ovarian cancer, 2% chance of primary peritoneal cancer still exists because we can't remove the peritoneum, and RRBSO should be performed by age 35 or 40 years. When it is done later, it does not give any benefit. So please understand that, okay? So these are some data. Better understanding of potential advantages of elective salpingectomy alone is there today. The pendulum has swung towards ovarian conservation, particularly in premenopausal women. So evidence really points towards conservation. Please understand that. Bilateral oophorectomy provides small absolute cancer risk for patient at an average age of ovarian or breast cancer, but is associated with long-term health consequences. Grade 2C recommendation, and therefore conserve the ovary. The risks of estrogen therapy for premenopausal women, they have to understand that the dose required is higher for them when it is they are premenopausal.
Ma'am, can you summarize?
And, yeah, this is the last one. A woman deserves to get estrogens till menopause and a little beyond, but preferably from her own ovaries. A young woman is a gift of nature, but an old woman is a work of art, and art should always be conserved. So conserve ovaries to conserve women's health for a lifetime. Thank you very much.